Colin, for shame, you haven't read Monster Manual? Oh my god, there's so much good stuff in there. Let me be honest, I'm on P, I think, and I'm reading it a little bit each night, and there's some really good stuff in there. I have, since Mike Shea was called out by Mike Merles for not reading the Monster Manual, I have read every book that has come out, which was Mordenkainen's Forward, I think. I haven't read Volo's all the way through. But I've read those monster details, and there's so much good lore and so much good stuff in there. But this kind of goes back to what Ray Otis was saying when everything's like kind of locked down. And I don't believe that with 5e. I believe there, my opinion's there's some wishy-washy things in there. Stealth is one of them. It's big. It gets used a lot. Players want to use stealth, and it's not exactly clear where it's going to be. I'm at 50 seconds, so it looks like I'm pulling a Jackson.
Hello, I'm Colin Green, and you are listening to Spike Pit, episode 126. At the top of the show there, we heard from Rich Fraser, Cockatrice Nuggets. He is the man that I turn to for all my D&D Beyond advice. He kind of got me fired up about it and quite excited. I've gone on to check out all sorts of resources, and I think this is the sort of thing that's perhaps driving the popularity of 5e. It really kind of spans all the different media. There's just a wealth of information out there for all the different flavours of content, really. You know, if any aspect of D&D that you can think of, I'm pretty sure, you know, they're addressing it in one way or another. And yeah, man, the 5e Monster Manual, wow. I started to look through it, then I got caught up in reading other rule sets and bits and bobs. And I know it gets some criticism for the size of the stat blocks, which, if you're trying to write an adventure and include all the stat blocks in the text, yeah, I can see how it gets to be a little bit of a problem. I'm not really too bothered about that. I quite like to put my monsters on index cards in a paraphrased form. But another thing, you know, if you want to throw a bit of money at 5e, they're always going to be happy to take it and provide you with monster cards, which means, you know, I do away with the index cards and I can use monster cards. I did an episode with my son where we unboxed one of the monster card sets, and, you know, I was impressed. And, you know, that's going forward, that's what I'm going to use. I'll probably still keep my index cards because I write my NPCs in there and monsters that I make up, and I quite often will do locations and encounters on index cards as well. I do like these little mind map things, which I started putting a few up on my Patreon, actually, for the pit crew to take a look at. Rich has done 2 call-ins, the second of which I'm going to play now. However, unfortunately, the first part of the message is none too clear. I think you can get the gist of it if you listen really hard, but maybe with headphones you'll be okay. But if you're driving, it's probably going to be a no-no. So bear with us on this one. I think he's got some good stuff to say.
But these stat blocks in the Monster Manual, they're huge, right? They're immense. They've got so much detail in them. And then, like Ray was saying, you go and you look at the spells, and they're so specific, and they're so, like, every level has, you know, a curve to it. Certain spells, like, fit into that curve, but Fireball is kind of an outlier because it's so special. And, I don't know, nostalgic, I guess, is what they say. But everything fits really tightly in 5e. And even if you dink around with some of that stuff, it doesn't fall apart, which is really nice. You can pull things out and you can add them together, add new things in, bracket new things on the side, and it all kind of works together with this core rule, right? And I think that it being so locked down, as Ray said, makes it easier when you go to create something. You have this blueprint of things that is already been made for you that you can totally copy. All right, that's all I got to say this time.
Tight and solid. That's what I think, Rich. I don't find it so bolted down, maybe in the way that Ray Otis does, and who else talked about it? Froth? Can't remember now. But yeah, I've got a call out to Ray. He's hopefully going to talk a little bit more about what he means by bolted down and how it affects his sort of design process. But I'm with you. I've heard a few other people talk about it, that they find it actually quite easy to design for 5e. And I was having this thought yesterday about opposed roles, and how did I tackle that back in the day? Say if you get a regular orc from BX, but you'd had not a hostile reaction, and somehow your player characters ended up in some sort of orc arm wrestling competition. I was just trying to remember whether we would use some sort of strength check or what mechanism we would use to resolve arm wrestling an orc, because obviously old school you had a totally different set of monster stats, whereas in 5e the monsters are really kind of like an NPC in terms of stats. They've got all the stats that the characters have got, and you just do an opposed strength check or strength with athletics. So yeah, I just couldn't remember. So if someone wants to explain that to me again, that would be pretty cool. But the opposed checks is something that in terms of design or running an adventure, the opposed checks, the DCs, the difficulty, setting all that sort of stuff, I just find pretty intuitive using the core mechanism of 5e. But listen, this is not intended to be an edition war. This, as far as I'm concerned, 5e is just D&D, and the sort of the solidness and the modularity of it, I'm convinced you can play D&D however you like, and the new streamlining of the rules just makes that a bit easier, in my humble opinion.
Hey, Colin, this is Angus from Kirby's Kids, calling back for part 2 on your 5th edition episodes. Hey, the other thing I wanted to point out, again, I can't recommend highly enough the Ben Riggs's Plot Points podcast, and again, episode 98 on 5 generations of D&D design. Also in that episode, right around the 12-minute mark, you have Skip Williams discussing the influences on D&D, literary, and then the rest of the panel riffing on that, and that's fascinating conversation. But then at the 20-minute mark, Skip discusses how the original DMG for first edition AD&D came to being, and specifically how there aren't any chapters in it, and how everyone there was asked to contribute an article for it, very similar to a magazine, hence the layout being like it is.
Kirby's Kids podcaster Angus there, and with a very good tip. Episode 98 of Plot Points is a D&D fan's dream. Some great names on there and some great content, a peek behind the curtains of the early days of Dungeons and Dragons, and a great listen. I thoroughly recommend it, as does Angus. And yeah, thanks for that call in, mate. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and like I say, I really urge anybody listening to this, check it out. Well worth your time. In other news, listeners will know Spike Pit likes to keep things kind of intimate and personal and grounded in reality. It's day 3 of the Faldo Series Junior Golf Tournament, and the boy last night was a little bit nervous. He's in the sort of middle of the field and managed to make the cut. So we get to go into day 3, that's today, and he's teeing off early again, an 8 a.m. start. He plays off a handicap of 9. This is a scratch tournament, so handicaps don't count. So he's up against some players that are a good deal better. So he's very pleased to make the cut. And yeah, it's been good. A few of his friends went home yesterday for an early bath. Didn't quite play to their handicap, so that's a bit of a shame. But Bedfordshire still represented in this tournament, as well as Spike Pit. I need to get some sponsorship deal with him or something like that, perhaps. And a Spike Pit little flag on his bag or polo shirt, or whatever. Enough of my tomfoolery. Back onto topic with D&D chat. We've got Che Webster from Roleplay Rescue up next. He's echoing the thoughts of an earlier call-in, I think a couple of episodes ago, from Joe Richter, who was sort of a little bit bored by it all, really. The latest iteration of D&D, not really for him. Che, as you'll find out, is a little bit more conflicted, but some of the comments do confuse me, and well, let's get to it.
Hey Colin, Che, just want to respond on the 5e stuff, really. I'm with kind of Joe Richter to a point. I really, really, really want to like 5e, and I've played plenty of it, and it was fun for the players. But I'll tell you what, all the character classes feeling the same. Okay, there are lots of options, but show me a wizard that hasn't taken Firebolt, because I've only seen one of dozens. And seriously, yeah, they all do end up feeling very samey. And I kind of, as GM, got bored. And I think, again, it's back to this thing. It's a player's game. Lots of detail for the player, lots of fun for the player. GMing, yeah, it got a bit dull. I just wasn't excited by it. And, but I'm back and I'm looking at it, and that's all down to you, dude. So thank you for encouraging me to take another look.
Okay, so the reason I'm confused is sort of what you say about finding it a bit dull, the players making characters that are a bit samey. I don't think that you could really fairly lay that at the door of the system. There's plenty of ways and plenty of choices, and no version of D&D has got any limitation as far as I'm concerned. I think you sit down to play D&D, you're really only limited by your imagination, because like the golden rule is the DM, although I don't totally agree with this, but the DM, or let's say the group, can change it as much as they like. You don't have to be hampered by the guidelines of Adventurers League. That's a little bit different and not something I have any experience of whatsoever, nor do I want it particularly. I don't know, dull just strikes me as a strange feeling to have, unless there's just something else going on with the game that's making it dull. Maybe you need to liven it up with a bit of a different setting, take it away from the realms. I believe you said you're not a Forgotten Realms fan. Normally I get fired up about settings more than systems. But anyway, man, maybe I'm doing you an injustice, but it's good you're having another look at the starter set, and I think you'll enjoy that adventure in there. It's a nice little sandbox, the Lost Mines of Fandelver, with a good little, fairly kind of old school, if you like, type of adventure, a bit of a crawl in there, and lots of little interesting locations to explore. The first encounter, the goblin encounter, it's a kind of a typical ambush trope, not a lot to go wrong there, but you quickly realise that 5e can be quite deadly, and if you had a bunch of players that mess up that first encounter, mate, you could be back into another one of your infamous TPKs. Man, I am really enjoying this little run of 5e that we're having. Lots of good call-ins, lots of discussion, and that's what I'm looking for at the Spike Pit. Keeping it civil, keeping it interesting. What more can you ask for? So yeah, thanks everybody once again. I've got more to get through, and keep them coming, and we'll keep banging out the episodes. Thanks to you, the listener. Thanks to the pit crew over at Patreon, and take care. I'll catch you later.